Y'all ready to be history?
Get started.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
To the Pro Audio Suite.
These guys are professional. They're motivated.
Thanks to TriBooth, the best vocal booth for home or on-the-road voice recording. And Austrian Audio, making passion heard. Introducing Robert Marshall from Source Elements and Someone Audio Post, Chicago. Darren Robbo Robertson from Voodoo Radio Imaging, Sydney. Tech to the VO Stars, George the Tech Whittam from LA. And me, Andrew Peters, voiceover talent and home studio guy.
Line up, learner!
Here we go.
And welcome to another Pro Audio Suite. Thanks to TriBooth. Don't forget the code PAP200 to get $200 off your purchase. And Austrian Audio, making passion heard. In fact, their passion was heard at NAMM recently, and they won a Tech Award for their headphones, the Hi-X65s. Well done, chaps.
Well
Nice
deserved.
headphones.
They are
Indeed.
nice.
Congrats.
Yeah. No, a quick one. I was mucking around on the weekend with a microphone, playing around with a high pass filter. And it sounded actually at one point like shit, to be honest. So my question is, and I think we're going to get a few different answers here, depending on from which corner the answer comes from, but should we be using a high pass filter?
Yeah. My
Yes.
question is, why
Only
were you mucking around
very
with the high
mild.
pass filter? Yes, that's right. What were you trying to achieve, I guess, is the first question.
Okay.
To get high.
High pass.
That's right.
Yeah.
But should you, like if I'm doing a session here and I'm just going to send the audio off or someone's capturing at the other end, they're going to do all the processing. Should I use it?
As an audio engineer, and I'm sure Robert would agree with this, the first question you ask before you do anything in terms of processing, whether it be voiceover or anything, is what am I trying to achieve? What do I want to get done by playing with
I can
this
answer
high pass
that.
filter? So my question to you,
I want to
AP,
get paid.
Yeah, that's right. But,
Yeah, apart from that.
but yeah, so my question to you would be, was there some low end rumble you were trying to get rid of? What were you trying to achieve in the first place?
Well, what I was doing, I was just mucking around actually, because I set up kind of like a area that I can get guests to record when they come in here, so I can keep them out of my booth with their stinky, horrid little germs. And they can work out here, but I was mucking around with it, and I did actually notice that I was getting quite a bit of fan noise from the computer. So I thought, I might experiment. So I grabbed out the NTG4, chucked that up, hit the high-pass filter, recorded that, played it back. It got rid of all that low-end rumble, but it got rid of just about everything else.
See, I'm not a big fan of the low pass filter on the NTG4. Anyway,
It's
and
very aggressive.
You know that it is
Yeah.
very aggressive. I don't like it.
Yeah.
You know. So I think that's probably
That's
your
what I was going to say. It's like okay as long as it's a really mild, like high pass filter. And to me, I think that 100 hertz is too high.
Mhm.
Even 80 hertz is getting a little bit too close. Like something in the 40, 50 range,
Yeah.
where there really is nothing down there, and unless you've got like you're swinging low.
Yeah.
For a voiceover? I mean, I've not really heard any frequency content on a VO below maybe 60, maybe.
Yeah,
Well, anything worth
right. So
keeping
100,
anyway, that's
180 are too high. So like
Yeah.
40 and 60 are like perfectly fine for that. And it gets rid of,
Yeah.
it can kind of help with some popping. If you have any DC stuff or things like that, it can really help with editing. Because if not, you get click, click, click every time you go in and out of an edit.
Oh, it helps a ton with rumble. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so hard to edit unless you're using Twisted Wave, which has auto extend to zero crossing, which fixes gets rid of all the discontinuities automatically. It's like, you don't have discontinuities very much if you high pass, because there's not so much of a distorted waveform. You don't, when you're in your room tone, you don't have that big wavy line when the mic is picking up 22 hertz for no good reason,
Right.
just because it can hear it. I call the TLM 103, for example, the seismograph. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, yeah, probably
Yeah.
pretty true. Absolutely.
Yeah, so having some high pass filter is good, but yeah, some of them just don't work as well. They're too. Even the Apollo, I think, is around 80 when I kick on the Apollo, and sometimes I go, neuter did it a little bit too much, and other times, if it's a woman's voice and there isn't much content below 100, then it's perfectly fine, and it kind of depends.
And then you got to worry about like how steep it is. Like I'll tell you the craziest one. Do you guys know what the high pass filter is in a MyLab VIP 50?
No.
Should I know?
Let's guess.
I don't know.
Well, Michael Jackson's saying.
Oh,
yeah, come on,
Jesus.
let's guess
Well,
one.
God, if Michael Jackson was singing, it could be about 1K, couldn't it?
Right. It's super gentle. It's got to be. But what do you think the knee on that thing is?
I think it's 6 dB per octave.
Yeah, it's really really shallow slope.
Right. It's subtle.
You ready for what the setting is on that thing?
Oh, it's less than that?
Yeah.
I think it's set to 400.
Oh, 400 hertz. And then what's the slope?
Extremely gentle, whatever the hell it is.
400?
That's how the U87 is too. It's at like 200. Is it? I think it's 200 is the U87.
Yeah, it's really...
But it's, again, gentle. And the trend has gone towards more steeper slopes. But I like some of the mics have dual position.
Yeah.
So they have like a steep slope at a lower frequency and then a shallow slope at a higher frequency.
Right.
So you get the best of both worlds. You can kind of switch back and forth.
Because the steep slopes, and especially depends on how well it's designed, you can get some phasiness and some ringy kind of stuff down there. If the slope is too sharp, there's always trade-offs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it when basically you can hear something go away with the high pass filter. The only thing I want to go away is rumble, and that's it. And maybe it helps with a couple like really egregious peep-hops.
Yeah. So with the OC818, talking about Austrian Audio being a sponsor, of course, their high pass filter is 40. Do they go as low as 40?
Yeah.
40,
There's
80.
a 40, 80, and 160.
Okay.
Yeah, the 160 is too high. The 80 is probably okay. The 40 is definitely pretty much for voiceover. You're not going to really have a problem using it. And I would expect, to be honest, I haven't used it on the Austrian Audio yet, but I would imagine that it's well done and probably doesn't have too many artifacts.
Here's the thing I tell some of my clients too about when they should use a high pass filter. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys that produce. You connect to a voice actor studio on Source Connect. They're on a TLM 103 inside an ISO booth. And the ISO booth is lovingly passing along 60 or lower hertz, standing waves or rumbles or something.
Right.
Yep.
Would you prefer that A, be left alone, or B, would you prefer that to have already been dealt with on the way in before you even see it, so that your woofer cones remain intact?
See, I don't mind dealing with it, to be honest with you, if I know it's there. It's personal preference, I guess.
Because I'm just telling actors, like, imagine, the client sitting in the control room, your voice is passing through unscathed, all low frequency intact. The engineer doesn't know or care enough to put a high pass. Yeah. And there's a subwoofer in the room, and you mistakenly pop the mic or anything, and the subwoofer's like, voomp,
Then everyone has to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, it's like, no, that should be high pass. But I mean, my God, the engineer would put a high pass filter.
You would hope.
At least 60 hertz.
Surely, that's right.
Yeah.
But if they don't, I've listened to Bjork albums where she's popping the mic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like I'm hearing plosives, and I'm like, how did they not catch that? Why didn't they get rid of it in the studio?
I mean, if you listen to like some splits from music stuff, the headphone bleed is just egregious. And there's all kinds of crazy stuff.
Have you ever heard Mick Jagger's vocals isolated?
No.
Have you ever heard what's his face? David Lee Roth's vocals isolated for
Panama?
Jump?
No, not Jump, not Panama. What's another one?
Dreams?
Oh God.
No, that's Sammy Hagar.
Oh, that is Sammy
It's
Hagar.
it's hilarious though. I mean, you can hear him in the solo walking around the room, and all of a sudden he finds one of those things that goes like wee, like the little propeller inside the tube that makes like the high pitched sort of wee sound. He's just like, oh yeah, like just crazy stuff. It's hilarious to listen to it, just like isolated,
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story though, and I think if Des, who was on the show, Des DeKeen, is listening, and I think we talked about this when he was on, many, many moons ago when I was working on air at a radio station in Adelaide. It was the beginning of FM radio, commercial FM radio in Australia. We were late to the party. So it was sort of early 80s, and we got a lot of audiophile guys that were getting right into it. And some guy had just bought this hugely expensive hi-fi system with these massive Wharfdale speakers. And I, by accident, popped the mic. The next morning, I got called in. I just had a call from one of the listeners. you blew up his speaker.
Oh, no.
I'm like, oh,
It's like Howard
Do you think
Stern
Howard Stern turned off the... You're going exactly where I was going. Do you think he turned off the high pass filter for that one?
No, I don't think so. I think he probably...
no, that was the high arse filter.
He gave it a bit of boost, I would have thought. Yeah. Exactly.
What a genius.
Yeah, but look, I mean, coming back to your original question, though, AP, I reckon, look, I know I sit here week after week and I say don't process, but we all know that there are occasions when you sort of have to in any recording situation, but always ask yourself, just what am I trying to do? What's the end result that I'm looking for? So I put the high pass filter on my mic and it sounds like shit. Okay. Don't just leave it and go, well, that's the best I can do. Either go, I won't bother, or come up with a plan B. To find something that does work, that does what you want it to do without being detrimental to the rest of the audio. I mean,
like actually solve a problem. Don't apply a fix to something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Is the first thing.
Yeah, totally. Don't do anything. If it doesn't need anything, don't touch it. I mean, I was watching something last night on YouTube. I think it was Chris Lord-Alge, and he was talking about mixing the new Lady Gaga track, the one that's in Mavericks. Pretty sure it was him. I'm pretty sure that was the track. And it doesn't really matter, but he was talking about, like, he said there's been occasions with vocals where I actually haven't really touched the EQ. I've reached for compression, I've reached for blah, 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 but I haven't really had to touch the EQ because nothing needed doing. So, you're talking about it that
like
level.
With a 41.6.
Yeah.
You're talking about at that level, that there's guys like that go, well, I don't need to put any EQ on, so I'm not going to, because there's nothing that needs EQing.
But it's also making sure that whatever you send out is as clean as it possibly can be. So if that means, if there is a low end rumble, I guess, then maybe you do put a high pass filter on, but just don't be aggressive with it.
Just give it enough to clean it up. Yeah. I mean,
there's a certain thing that can happen with processing, whereas like you're like, okay, this EQ, this high pass filter, this compressor, this multi-band compressor, all of a sudden you got so many things on it, and you're like, and then you take a step back and you realize it sounds like crap. And it just incrementally, slowly started sounding like crap, like boiling a frog, until all of a sudden you've killed it. Yeah. And you don't realize how good it is. And then when you turn everything off and you're like, oh man, like that mic's really natural and clean and not bad. And why am I putting all these things on there? Because I want to like use the stuff I bought or something. If there's not a reason to, don't use it, because those things come with a price.
Yeah, I get people are like, can you make a preset for me? And then they rattle off the laundry list of plugins that they own.
No, wow.
And then and I have the UAD plugins too. And I'm like, I'm only going to use what I've deemed necessary. I'm just because you own these things, I'm not going to just put them in there. So, just so you're aware, if I know that I can get the sound I need using native plugins and just very straightforward tools that aren't heavy on your system, don't require licenses, and on and on and on. That's what I'm going to use to get the end result. You know?
Less is always more. I mean, I've seen that with just mixes. You do the whole mix and all of a sudden you're like, why? And I think a really important thing, just if you're doing, you watch people mixing music, and the first thing you do is they put the kick fader up and then they reach for the EQ and they add a bunch of low end to it.
Yeah.
And they start going through the whole thing before it's like, what the first thing you should do is just balance everything out.
That's right. Listen to what you need.
See where you're at.
Yep.
And sometimes like things are counterintuitive with audio. For example, you want your kick drum to sound like it's really weighty. Maybe you don't need so much weight in your kick drum and you need a good solid blend with the bass guitar. And then all of a sudden the thing sounds like it has a great foundation and it's not just like kind of like flobbing all over the place, being unclear. You have like some tight, less is more.
Like the way they used to record for vinyl, you couldn't put a load of bass in because
wouldn't handle it.
The record wouldn't work.
The needle would jump through the next. You'd blow a whole mastering record.
So they had to work out a way of making it sound like it had low end without actually adding it.
That's right. You should be an engineer, AP. What are you doing? Sitting on that side of the
mic. What do you mean?
And then other bizarre tricks that they used to use for vocals, like they would encode Dolby but not decode it.
So you get that sort of teeny.
It give it that airy sort of. It's like another version of like oral exciter.
Yeah. That's clever. And just blend it in with the original.
Yeah. Just give that kind of crispy kind of edge to it. Let it cut through stuff.
I never heard that.
That was an old like trick in the 80s.
I like that one.
So the moral of the story is, if you're a voice talent, don't try and be an audio engineer.
Yeah, I think so. Look, caveated by what we just said. Like, yes, there probably are going to be times that you need to do something, but just do the bare minimum. Don't try and be all, I've got to fix it completely. Just do what needs to be done and leave it alone.
Actual problems.
That's right. Totally.
And not on the way in, if you can help it.
Preferably. And that's the beauty of the digital age is, you can play with it afterwards. You can put it down and, sort it out later.
I mean, there's like a high pass on the microphone works as long as it's not in the way and not cutting out too much. It lets you optimize your gain. It makes it so that if you're compressing things or whoever's compressing them, because you shouldn't be, but compressing things later, the compressor's not getting knocked by some stupid thing that no one's going to hear anyway. So all they end up hearing is the gain reduction from, whatever it is that made the mic hit a bunch of low end.
Yeah.
If it's a gentle, out of the way, high pass filter, you're probably okay. But if you don't know, then just don't even flip the switch.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah. If you don't know what it's doing and you can't hear the result of doing it, then turn it off. That's another big tip for you.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're evaluating your high pass filter with your laptop speakers, you got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one last thing, I'll throw this to you too, Robert, and get your thoughts. But I mean, if I was in a remote session and say it was, for argument's sake, I know it would never happen because I know AP's room too well. But if we were having that discussion, I would have no issue with the voice talent going to me, hey, I've noticed for some reason today there's a bit of low end rumble. Can you hear it? Yeah, I can hear it. Do you want me to do anything about it on this end? No, it's cool. Just leave it. Just give the engineer the choice as well.
Give them the choice.
That's
like
right.
this or like that. And the engineer can tell you quickly if that's helpful or
exactly.
not.
I don't think there's any engineer on the planet that's going to beat you down because you tell him there's a bit of an issue. Especially if it's just something as simple as, for some reason my fan's going crazy today or whatever, it's like I would have no issue with that. I would never sort of look down or go, well, fuck, sorry, we've got to cancel the session.
It's like going to your doctor and telling them that you don't smoke, even though you've been smoking for 30 years.
Yes, that's right.
They're not going to be able to help you if you lie to them.
Yeah, that's right.
You're not hiding it from the people that it matters to.
I agree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
There you go.
Time to fire up.
Well, that was fun. Is it over?
The Pro Audio Suite, with thanks to Tribooth and Austrian Audio, recorded using Source Connect, edited by Andrew Peters and mixed by Voodoo Radio Imaging, with tech support from George the Tech Whittam. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and join in the conversation on our Facebook group. To leave a comment, suggest a topic, or just say g'day, drop us a note at our website, theproaudiossuite.com.